Hello viewers. First of all, before going into detail, I would like to mention that this video is a part of activities undertaken by the Zoological Society of Assam (ZSA) to help UG and PG students during this harsh time of COVID-19 pandemic. This presentation is on DNA replication in eukaryotes that I picked up from the UG syllabus of Guwahati University. Till the end of this video, I hope the students will get to learn about what is DNA replication and some features of DNA replication, that is semi-conservative as well as bidirectional replication. Without enzymes, this process of replication is incomplete. So we have to learn about enzymes involved in replication and along with it mechanism of replication, and finally I am putting here some more detail about the enzyme DNA polymerase. So here I am giving an introduction about the basics of DNA and its replication. DNA is the basis of inheritance. That is, DNA passes down the generations from parents to their offspring. This is possible only because DNA is capable of making its exact copies for equal distribution in cells during cell division. And this process is known as DNA replication. And this process occurs in S phase of cell cycle, that is immediately after G1 phase. The process to start, the unzipping or unwinding of the parental DNA duplex is necessary. As we know, DNA is a double helical structure, so to initiate the process, it must undergo unwinding first. This separation leads to the formation of a Y-shaped fork, which I am going into detail in the upcoming slides. The strands on which the new DNA will be formed are known as template strands. Unlike prokaryotic DNA, which is circular and less complex, the eukaryotic DNA is however linear and more complex and organized into complex structures called chromatin. The eukaryotic DNA replication however has certain properties like semi-conservative, bidirectional and semi-discontinuous, which I am going into further detail in the next slides. Here I am putting two figures. The first one is showing the molecular structure of DNA. As we know, the DNA is a double helical structure in which 4 nitrogenous bases are there: adenine, thymine, guanine and cytosine. These 4 bases are held together by the hydrogen bonds in between. The bases are complementary to each other, that is, adenine will always bind to thymine with double hydrogen bonds and guanine will bind to cytosine with triple hydrogen bonds. That is, the DNA double helixes are held together by hydrogen bonds in between. The base will always remain with one sugar molecule and one phosphate molecule, and together sugar molecule, phosphate and the basis is known as nucleotide. So here I am showing this molecular structure, and in the second figure I am showing the cell cycle in which I am depicting that DNA synthesis occurs in S phase. During G1 phase, the cell itself prepares for the DNA replication, and finally in the S phase the DNA synthesis completes with daughter DNA molecules. Here I am trying to put a bit information regarding the historical background that lies behind the discovery of DNA and its replication. So the DNA was first discovered in 1869 by Swiss physiological chemist Frederick Miesser from the nuclei of human WBC that he first called nuclein before calling it DNA or nucleic acid. In 1889, Richard Altman coined the term nucleic acid. Between 1885 and 1901, Albrecht Koschel, a German scientist, isolated the bases of nucleic acids, which are the building blocks of DNA. In 1953, the greatest discovery regarding DNA and its replication came into light. That is, James Watson and Francis Crick at the University of Cambridge, England, proposed the DNA double helix model, and for this fascinating discovery, they were awarded Nobel Prize in 1962. They also addressed DNA replication for the first time. By 1957, three modes of DNA replication were proposed: semi-conservative, conservative, and dispersive replication. In this lecture, I am going to talk about the semi-conservative replication later on. Then in 1958, M. Messelson and F. Stahl at California Institute of Technology, California, conducted an experiment which proved the semi-conservative mode of DNA replication. So here comes the semi-conservative replication. As the DNA parental helix separates to initiate replication, each strand will serve as a template on which two daughter DNA molecules are synthesized, and each daughter DNA strand contains half of the original parental strand. So as the parental strand is half conserved, the DNA replication is called semi-conservative and is experimentally proved by Messelson and Stahl. Here I am showing the old strand, and these are the new bases which are going to be added with the old strand. Each strand of the older of the parental DNA molecule will act as a template. Here are the two daughter DNA molecules in which the parental strand or the template strand is conserved in each of the daughter DNA molecule. So the DNA replication is semi-conservative as the parental DNA molecule is always conserved half. This is the diagrammatic representation of Messelson and Stahl experiment. In their experiment, they took Escherichia coli as their experimental organism and were initially grown in a medium containing ammonium chloride labeled with heavier isotope of nitrogen, that is N15 nitrogen. The ammonium chloride in the media acted as a source of nitrogen for the basis of DNA. Now the new DNA molecules after extraction contain N15 nitrogen, that is N15 DNA. After that, the cells were shifted in a medium containing the light isotope of nitrogen, that is N14 nitrogen, in the same media, that is ammonium chloride media. The DNA were then extracted and its point density was determined by centrifugation in cesium chloride density gradient. But at this point, the DNA showed a hybrid band between N15 and N14 DNA bands, and the new DNA molecules contain N15 and 14 nitrogen. That is why it showed a hybrid intermediate band, that band between N15 and N14 DNA bands. After two generations, the half of the DNA had N14 DNA and the other half had N15 DNA. After three generations, the N14 medium contained large fraction of this N14 nitrogen, that is N14 DNA, and a smaller fraction of N15 DNA. However, the N15 duplexes never appeared, which experimentally proves the semi-conservative replication model. This N15 nitrogen is still there, though the majority of fractions had N14 DNA, but this N15 nitrogen is still there, which came from the initial culture that contained N15 nitrogen. So this proves experimentally that DNA replicates in a semi-conservative way. Bidirectional replication. It is one of the features of DNA replication in eukaryotes. But before that, we have to understand some of the basic terminologies. First, origin. See, DNA replication never initiates from anywhere in the template DNA. It starts from a specific sequence on template DNA, which is known as origin, and is about 100 to 150 base pair in size. So this is the point, origin is the point from where replication begins. And replicon is the segment of DNA or the stretch of DNA within origin. Remember, replicon lies within origin, where replication actually starts and DNA strands start melting. Eukaryotic DNA has multiple replicons and oricytes, unlike prokaryotic DNA. Here in this diagram, I am showing replicon 1 and replicon 2. Starting from the replicon 1 to replicon 2, the whole portion is the origin. However, DNA will melt only at replicon 1 and replicon 2. Here I am showing the DNA is melting at replicon 1 and replicon 2, and finally the replicon 1 and replicon 2 will combine and the replication process goes on. Here I am showing the replication fork. As I have told earlier, the DNA strands unwind at the point of ori or origin. This separation leads to the formation of a Y-shaped structure called a replication fork, as it takes the shape of a fork also. Here I am giving the structure of a replication fork. The strands in color blue are the template strands, and the red color here is showing the ongoing replication process for the formation of new polynucleotide chains. However, the strands of DNA have certain directions. If one strand goes from 3 to 5 prime direction, then the other strand will go from 5 to 3 prime direction. That is why a DNA molecule is said to have opposite polarity. On the template strands, a number of enzymes, which I am going to explain later on, will act to form the new polynucleotide chain. Now comes the replication bubble or eye. If I have to show it in a figure, a replication bubble or eye is the open or unbound region of a replication fork. That is, a bubble like structure will form at the point of origin or at the point of replicon, because at these points the DNA starts to melt. So the melting led to the formation of these bubble like structures, which are also known as eye. So this is the fork structure, which I have put in this figure in a magnified way, and these are the origins where replication starts. The replication will go in both the direction from this origin or replicon, which I am putting it in next slide. So the DNA replication begins in both directions from the origin of replication, as I have already told, where the two replication forks move in opposite directions, and this is called the bidirectional replication. Here in this figure, this is the origin where the DNA molecule unwinds or unzips, and the replication will go in both the directions. These arrow marks are showing the directions from the origin where the replication will take place in both the direction. In another figure, I am giving the difference of the direction with prokaryotic cell. In prokaryotic cell, the direction is unidirectional, that is, the replication will go on only in one direction, but in eukaryotic cells the replication will take place in both the directions. That is why it is known as bidirectional replication. Now comes the mechanism of replication in eukaryotes. DNA replication in eukaryotes occurs mainly in 4 steps. The first one is pre-initiation, where the origin of replication will be identified by number of protein complexes. Then comes the initiation part, in which the replication will initiate at the point of origin. Then comes the elongation process, in which the new DNA polynucleotide chains will be synthesized by addition of deoxyribonucleotides, in short DNTPs, by number of enzymes, though the principal enzyme is DNA polymerase. And finally comes the termination. This is the point where replication stops and where lagging strand and end is replicated by telomerase enzyme. Now what is lagging strand and what is telomerase enzyme, I'll explain it in upcoming slides, but remember, during termination the replication process finally stops. Then comes the replication rate. This is around 10 times slower than in prokaryotes. That is, in prokaryotes it is much higher. In eukaryotes it is slower, that is 50 nucleotides per second can be added. Pre-initiation. During pre-initiation, the origin is first identified by a multiprotein complex of about 6 subunits and known as origin recognition complex, or in short ORC. So this ORC helps in the recognition of origin sites in the template DNA. This ORC binds to the origin in early G1 phase. After attachment of this ORC to the origin, it will help in loading another 3 proteins, which are known as replication activator proteins, in short RAP, namely CDC6, that is cell division cycle 6, CDT1, that is chromatin licensing and DNA replication factor 1, and MCM, that is mini chromosome maintenance protein complex. About 2 to 3 subunits of MCM proteins hold the DNA strands during replication. So till the binding of ORC to the origin occurs in early G1 phase. However, the assembly of these proteins, that is CDC6, CDT1 and MCM, occurs in late G1 phase and forms a complex, that is pre-replicative complex, or in short pre-RC, which is initially inactive in form. So this ORC acts as a scaffold for the attachment of this protein. Without ORC, the attachment of these proteins would not be possible. So these events during pre-initiation prepares the DNA of the cell for the initiation to occur. Here in this figure I am trying to show you the origin site where at first the ORC will bind, then after the binding of ORC to the origin site, two proteins, that is CDC6 and CDT will bind, and the binding of CDC6 and CDT1 helps in loading of another protein, that is MCM, about 2 to 3 subunits, and finally this whole complex is known as pre-RC or pre-replicative complex. Initiation. So the pre-initiation phase occurs in G1 phase of cell cycle. After that, the inactive pre-RC complex will enter the S phase of cell cycle. Its activation is done by two proteins, that is CDK, that is cyclin dependent kinase, and DDK, that is DBF4 dependent kinase, by phosphorylating, that is by attaching phosphate groups to both pre-RC and ORC. So the pre-RC complex is now activated. Now two proteins, that is CDC6 and CDT1 of pre-RC complex that is attached during pre-initiation are removed from origin. So the function of CDC6 and CDT1 is just to load CDK and DDK proteins. However, MCM protein is still there and in the origin and is not removed, and 2 to 3 units of MCM firmly hold the DNA. Now MCM proteins help in binding of two another proteins, that is GIN and CDC45 proteins. So all these proteins together helps in unwinding or melting of template DNA at origin by removing the hydrogen bonds in between. So MCM protein in eukaryotes is working just like helicase protein in prokaryotes. After melting, the strands of DNA becomes unstable. So these strands are stabilized by another protein called SSB, that is single stranded binding protein. Now, as the DNA melts at origin, this melting puts stress on DNA and inserts supercoiling. These supercoils must be removed for efficient replication to occur. So another protein called topoisomerase 1b clips one strand of DNA and releases the supercoils or the stress on DNA. There are types of topoisomerases depending on if it cuts only one strand or both the strands of DNA. In eukaryotes, only topoisomerase 1b is found and it cuts only one strand, as I have already said. This origin contains 11 BP80 rich sequences, which is highly conserved because ANT, as we already know, ANT is bonded by double hydrogen bonds, so it will be easier to remove the DNA at origin. Where if it has GC, guanine and cytosine, it will become harder to melt the DNA at origin. This figure is representing the scheme of initiation. As I have already mentioned, first ORC, that is origin recognition complex, will recognize the initiation sites, that means the origin sites on DNA strands, and will bind to the origin sites in early G1 phase. After that, two other proteins that are CDC6 and CDT1 along with another protein, that is MCM, will join this ORC complex, and together they will form pre-RC complex, that is pre-replicative complex, in late G1 phase. After that, however, this pre-replicative complex is initially inactive in form. After that, this complex will enter the S phase, where at first CDK and DDK proteins will join this ORC complex, and CDC6 and CDT proteins will be removed. That means CDC6 and CDT proteins are only helping in loading of the CDK and DDK proteins. However, MCM proteins are still there and holding the DNA strands firmly. Now the pre-RC complex is activated. After that, MCM protein recruits another protein, that is CDC45, which will bind to the origin site. After that, this activated complex, with this activated complex, another protein that is gene protein will get attached to this complex, and together they help in melting the DNA strands at the site of origin. Later on, some other proteins that are DNA polymerases along with some other proteins will help in synthesizing the DNA strands at the site of DNA replication. So here comes the elongation part. So during elongation, new polynucleotide chains will be formed. Here comes the principal replicating enzyme DNA polymerase, which adds complementary bases or DNTPs from 5 to 3' direction on template strands. At this point, one thing to remember that DNA polymerase can add bases only from 5 to 3' direction and never from 3 to 5' direction. That is, for DNA polymerase to add bases, the template strands must be in 3 to 5' direction so that it can add bases from 5 to 3' direction. Here I want to tell something about the DNTPs. The DNTPs first remain in inactive form containing only one phosphate group and known as DNMPs or the deoxynucleotide monophosphates. As these DNMPs contain only one phosphate group, so it is in inactive form. The DNMPs are activated by adding pyrophosphorite group, also known as pyrophosphate group. After adding of this pyrophosphorite group, the DNMPs become activated to DNTPs. Here I am showing this inactive DNTP known as DNMP with only one phosphate group. After adding of this pyrophosphoryl group, it will be converted to active DNTP with 3 phosphate groups. Only after adding of these additional 2 phosphate groups, the inactive DNTPs become activated to active DNTPs. Now there is a problem in elongation process, that is DNTPs cannot be added directly to the template strands. DNA polymerase enzyme cannot add bases without an existing strand of nucleotides and is known as primer. So primer is a short stretch or segment of RNA synthesized by enzyme primase along with DNA polymerase enzyme, which is directly added to the template strands from 5 to 3' direction, and DNA polymerase later add bases to these primers. As DNA polymerase enzyme can add bases only from 5 to 3' direction, so the primer must be in 5 to 3' direction. Here I am providing some information regarding primer. As I have already told, primer is required for de novo polymerization of DNA, and it is a short stretch of RNA of about 10 to 15 nucleotides. At this point, I want to tell that there are mainly three major types of DNA polymerases in eukaryotes which are directly involved in replication process. They are DNA polymerase alpha, epsilon and delta. This primase is actually a subunit of DNA polymerase alpha. It is not a single enzyme, it is a part of DNA polymerase alpha enzyme. Together they form pole prim complex. So we can say that primers are actually synthesized by DNA polymerase alpha enzyme. Now this primase subunit is again composed of 2 domains, P49. It has high and unstable primase activity, and P58 it is necessary for the stability and activity of the P49 subunit. Now DNA polymerase delta and epsilon will add bases from 3' hydroxyl end of primer. Here in this diagram, the red color marked here is the primer that is added from 5 to 3' direction. This is the primer in another strand. The DNA polymerase delta and epsilon will extend this 3' end of the primer to form a new polynucleotide chains. Now the DNA polymerase delta and epsilon catalyzes the nucleophilic attack of 3' hydroxyl terminus of already present nucleotide on the alpha phosphate group of incoming nucleotide, forming phosphodiester bond. In this diagram, this is the nucleotide that is already present in the polynucleotide chain, and the 3' hydroxyl group of this nucleotide will attack the alpha phosphate group of the incoming nucleotide. Alpha phosphate group is the one group that is attached directly with the functional group. So after this nucleophilic attack, phosphodiester bond will be formed. This is the phosphodiester bond, the red color marked here, with the release of water molecule. Along with it, as I have already told, the nucleotides are attached with the activated DNTPs are attached with 3 phosphates. The 2 phosphates will be removed by releasing one pyrophosphate group. That is, here I am not showing the pyrophosphate group, but along with it one pyrophosphate molecule is also released. This pyrophosphate molecule is used in the formation of hydrogen bond during the replication process. What is leading and lagging strand? DNA is synthesized always in 5 to 3' direction and not in 3 to 5' direction. So for 3 to 5 prime template there is no problem, and DNA polymerase can add bases in 5 to 3 prime direction continuously. This is called the leading strand. However, problem arises for 5 to 3 prime template, as DNA polymerase never adds bases in 3 to 5 prime direction. So on this strand, short stretches of DNA are formed from 5 to 3 prime direction, known as Okazaki fragments, and the strand is called lagging strand, as replication on this strand occurs slower than the leading strand due to formation of these Okazaki fragments. How the Okazaki fragments are formed, I'll explain later on. There are different polymerase enzymes for both the strands, as in prokaryotes only one polymerase can carry on the process. However, in eukaryotes there are different enzymes for both the strands, DNA polymerase epsilon along with pCNA ring for leading strand, and DNA polymerase delta along with pCNA ring for lagging strand. Now, what is pCNA rings? See, the DNA polymerase delta and epsilon are much heavier enzymes. So pCNA ring is a ring-like structure that functions as a sliding clamp, like a clip, and binds to polymerase so that polymerases don't fall off the strands during replication. As I have already mentioned, pCNA acts as a clamp or like a clip to prevent DNA polymerases from dissociating off the DNA strands. pCNA is also a protein. Now the another protein, that is RFC, that is replication factor C, helps in loading of pCNA to the DNA polymerases. So RFC acts like a clamp loader which loads pCNA to the polymerases. Now in this figure here I am showing the elongation process in detail. These are the pCNA rings, each with polymerase enzymes, DNA polymerase delta for lagging strand and DNA polymerase epsilon for leading strand. As DNA is produced in fragments or in stretches in lagging strands, so each fragment will need primers for its synthesis. Now these are other proteins, as I have already explained earlier, CDC45 gene, etc. These all proteins together carry out the elongation process. Now this is the polymerase alpha, which helps in synthesizing the primers with its primase subunits. These are here I am giving the structures of the polymerases. This is polymerase alpha, this is epsilon and delta, each with 4 subunits. After the replication of new DNA strands, the primers must be removed from both the strands, as there is no need of RNA stretch in DNA and to complete the process of replication. There are generally 2 pathways for removal of primers. For leading strand, the DNA polymerase epsilon removes the primer from leading strand by its 5 to 3 prime exonuclease activity. That is, DNA polymerase epsilon can click bases from 5 to 3 prime direction if necessary. The gap thus created is filled up again by DNA polymerase epsilon by adding DNTPs. Now, after the gap is filled up, the nick is sealed or joined by enzyme called DNA ligase, thereby completing the synthesis of new DNA strand and leading strand. The mechanism of removal of primers from lagging strand is still uncertain. However, the most accepted theory I am explaining here, the RNase H1 protein along with DNA polymerase delta removes all the nucleotides from primer, but is unable to remove the last few 2 to 3 nucleotides from the primer. These remaining 2 to 3 nucleotides are removed by another protein called FEN1 protein, that is flap endonuclease 1 protein. The gap thus created is filled up again by the DNA polymerase delta enzyme by its 5 to 3 prime polymerase activity. And now the Okazaki fragments, the stretches, are now joined by the same enzyme, that is DNA ligase, and completes the process of replication in lagging strand. Here I am providing some more details on Okazaki fragments. Okazaki fragments are named after its discoverers, Reiji Okazaki and his wife Tsuneko Okazaki, while they are working on DNA replication in bacteriophage in 1968. In eukaryotes, average size of Okazaki fragments are about 150 to 200 base pair. As I have already told, each Okazaki fragments contain RNA primer at its 5 prime end. A 3 kb DNA region in eukaryotes contain approximately 20 Okazaki fragments. Now, in leading strand, the replication process is continuous as DNA is synthesizing continuously. However, in lagging strand, the new DNA is produced in fragments, that is Okazaki fragments. The DNA replication is called semi-discontinuous, as in lagging strands, discontinuous fragments are produced. Here in this figure, I am showing the replication in both the strands, in leading and lagging strand. So this is actually the fork structure I am showing here. These are the polymerase enzymes. This one is the polymerase epsilon, and this one is the polymerase delta. Polymerase delta for lagging strand and polymerase epsilon for leading strand. Both the polymerase enzymes are moving from the same direction, that is from 5 to 3 prime direction. So for the template strand, that is from 3 to 5 prime direction, there is no problem in synthesizing the new DNA strand, as the DNA polymerase epsilon can continue the process without any interruption. However, for the template strand that is going from 5 to 3 prime direction, there is problem in synthesizing the new DNA strand, as DNA polymerase cannot add bases from 3 to 5 prime direction. So here lies the fact that DNA polymerase delta folds back the template strand that goes from 5 to 3 prime direction, that folds back, or it forms a loop-like structure, so that its direction will become 3 to 5 prime direction, and now the DNA polymerase epsilon can add bases from 5 to 3 prime direction. As because of this loop, or because of this folding, there is an interruption in formation of the new DNA strand continuously. So due to this interruption, due to this nick-like structure, DNA polymerase delta cannot add bases continuously, and so the new DNA strands are produced in fragments, in stretches, each with primers at its beginning. And this is the polymerase alpha enzyme that I have already explained earlier, that polymerase alpha synthesizes the primers. So Okazaki fragments are produced only because of this loop-like structure. This loop is formed only to change the direction of the template strand, that is from 3 to 5 prime direction. So this is the elongation process. Actually, this is the process from starting from the beginning. These are the enzymes MCM, gene protein, RFC. These all are gathered on the template strands during the initiation process, pre-initiation process, and with the elongation process, the DNA replication ends with the elongation process. However, there is still the termination process that is left, which I am going to explain later on. Proofreading. So these holoenzymes, that is DNA polymerases, are high fidelity enzymes, but sometimes they make errors during replication. However, at a very low rate, that is 1 in every 1 billion bases. This accuracy is necessary to keep the mutation at a tolerable level. DNA proofreading mechanism involves correction of errors before continuing elongation, and it is done by 3 to 5 prime exonuclease activity of the polymerases, where terminal misincorporated bases or base is clipped off from the 3 prime end, and the correct one is inserted. DNA polymerase delta and epsilon are the major repairing enzymes. They remove misincorporated nucleotides and insert the correct ones. Later, the nick is joined by DNA ligase enzyme by forming phosphodiester bond in between. Here I am giving some more details on DNA polymerases and their comparison in tabular form for better understanding. Here I have provided their location. All of them are located within nucleus. Their processivity: polymerase epsilon has the highest processivity compared to polymerase alpha and delta. Subunits, I have already explained their structure. 5 to 3 prime polymerase activity, all of them have the 5 to 3 prime polymerase activity. 5 to 3 prime polymerase activity means if they can add bases from 5 to 3 prime direction or not. Exonuclease activity: polymerase alpha does not have any exonuclease activity. Polymerase epsilon has both the exonuclease activities, that is from 5 to 3 prime direction and as well as from 5 to 3 prime direction. And polymerase delta, it lacks exonuclease activity from 5 to 3 prime direction, whereas it has exonuclease activity from 3 to 5 prime direction. Functions, I have already explained their functions. Polymerase alpha is involved in primer synthesis in both the strands. Polymerase epsilon is involved in leading strand synthesis, whereas polymerase delta is involved in lagging strand synthesis. Proofreading, polymerase alpha does not have any proofreading capacity, whereas polymerase epsilon and delta is involved in proofreading of DNA. Here comes the termination part. When the replication fork reaches the end, termination of replication occurs. Here in this figure, these are the primers that are marked in red. After removal of these primers in both the strands, there will be left 5' hydroxyl group, which DNA polymerase cannot extend further. As we know, DNA polymerase can extend only 3' hydroxyl group. So this will create a problem because DNA polymerase enzyme cannot fill up these gaps. So this creates unpaired ends in both the strands, which are also called 5' overhangs in both the strands. The problem is further more complicated for lagging strand, because during Okazaki fragment synthesis, each primer is added a few more nucleotides away from the main synthesis site, which I am not showing here. So there is a short stretch of DNA on template strand left at the end, because the primer would fall as there is no DNA template for its attachment. Polymerase cannot sit at the end as there is no primer available, as well as cannot extend the 5' hydroxyl end of the existing nucleotide. So here comes the problem, which is called the end replication problem in eukaryotes, and is overcome by enzyme called telomerase, which helps in adding repetitive sequences called telomere, which acts like a cap for eukaryotic DNA, which prevents the vital genes from degradation. So after adding of this telomere, the process of replication stops. This is about telomere, which consists of randomly repeated GC-rich sequences and is highly conserved and species specific, and is added to the 3' termini of template DNA with the help of telomerase enzyme. So this telomerase enzyme is a ribonucleoprotein enzyme having an RNA part of 90 to 30 BP long, and a protein part which is actually the catalytic part, which helps in adding or synthesizing the ends. The RNA part serves as a template for the parental DNA ends, which must be elongated. This is the structure of telomerase enzyme. This is the RNA stretch, which will act like a template for parental DNA ends, and this will bind to the DNA strands and will carry on the process. Telomere replication. So during telomere replication, first the aim is to extend this 3' hydroxyl group in both the parental DNA strands. So the 3' ends of both the parental DNA strands, and that is both the leading and lagging strand, will base pair with the RNA stretch of the telomerase enzyme. So this is the telomerase enzyme marked in green, and this is its RNA stretch, which will act like a template for the parental DNA strands. Now the catalytic site of telomerase, that is the protein part of telomerase, adds DNTPs to the parental DNA strands, that is to the 3' hydroxyl group of the parental DNA strands, by using this RNA stretch as a template. So now the 3' hydroxyl group in both the parental DNA strands are now extended. Now the telomerase will translocate to the another 3' end of the parental DNA strands and repeats the whole process several times to complete the process of formation of telomere. Now this 3' hydroxyl group of the RNA stretch of telomerase enzyme is providing the 3' hydroxyl group for the extension by the DNA polymerase enzyme. So now the DNA polymerase enzyme can extend this 3' hydroxyl group and completes the process of synthesis of new DNA strands. As I have already said, the 3' hydroxyl end of the RNA stretch of telomerase enzyme is now used as a primer by DNA polymerases, and DNA polymerases extend it to complete the process of replication. Here I am providing a video on telomere replication. As we all know that for the replication process to occur, 3' hydroxyl group is necessary. So in lagging strand, the primers in between can be easily removed by the DNA polymerases, and the gap is itself can be filled up by the enzyme. So at the end, however, there is a problem, as after removal of the primer, DNA polymerases cannot extend or the gap cannot be filled up by the polymerases, as there is no hydroxyl group available. So here comes the enzyme telomerase. The telomerase enzyme will bind to the 3' end of the template strands and this is the RNA template of the telomerase enzyme, with the help of which the parental DNA strands can be extended. Now the telomerase enzyme translocates to another position and continues the process to complete the replication of telomere. Now the OH group of this RNA primer can be used as a primer for the extension of the new polynucleotide chain by the DNA polymerase. Actually, this is not DNA polymerase alpha, it is DNA polymerase epsilon and delta, leading strands and lagging strands. So why to study DNA replication? The knowledge of DNA replication can be applied in various fields in biology, to detect faulty gene, and in recombinant DNA technology, during detection of protein and its isolation, in sequencing of genome, to understand the DNA fingerprinting method, and in drug delivery. Here I am providing the references and some suggested readings. Students can go through it. These references helped me a lot during the preparation of this presentation. At last, thank you for your interest in the topic and for your patience. Hope this will help in your studies. I am very much thankful to the Zoological Society of Assam for giving me this opportunity. For any query, feel free to contact me in my email. Thank you.